Welcome back to the Steven Universe Future Post Show on the Roundtable. I'm your host, Ostrich Vox, and joined this week is, you know him, you love him, Roundtable regular,
Tom.
Watch more of his videos. Alright, let's just jump right into it. This week we had the episodes Bluebird and a very special episode, and I think this is more in line with what an average run-of-the-mill episode series future would be like if it was a long-running series and not like a finite epilogue. But at the same time, I feel like we're gonna have more episodes like this down the road.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that they check in on the characters and, you know, most importantly, Steven, while also pushing the narrative forward in some aspects. Some ways it's like a literal motion of events, and in terms of a very special episode, it was a lot more character driven.
A lot of development.
And of course, as I said last week, each episode will open up with props to the Crewniverse. This week's episodes are storyboarded by Lamar Abrams and Mickey Brewster on Bluebird. Now, last week it was Lamar and Adam for Rosebud, so I'm assuming this is going to be closer to the permanent boarding team in terms of Lamar and Mickey, or at least I hope so.
I would think so.
And I think their styles actually like mesh well together, just because Lamar is, you know, I describe his Steven as like Sonic Steven. Like, it very much reminds me of like, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog and like just 80s, 90s retro gaming, and like how even like anime and manga kind of looked back then.
Yeah, and then Nikki has kind of more of an anime style.
Yeah, like Mickey's known as like the anime boarder. So I think like they mesh well together, and I think a lot of this episode, like just the movements and actions in that were beautiful, but we'll get to there in a second. As for a very special episode, this was again storyboarded by Amish Kumar. Last week I said Amish. I'm gonna take that L, and I'm gonna rectify it live, record it live on the internet.
I mean, it's not live, we're editing.
Yeah, record it live. See, we have a live audience. Come on, guys.
That's a really weird. That's such a weird phrase, recorded live.
I mean, technically everything's recorded live.
Technically, yeah.
But apparently this is Aaron's like second and last episode in Future, so I'm assuming could have been just like an in-between jobs thing or like freelance. You know, but that opens up for more opportunities for more storyboards to come on board, and people were pointing out that in the movie documentary, you can see like some of Future's production timeline in the background of one shot, and one of the board partners were Amish and Warren. So we know that like that it will be a future pairing, whoever Warren is. Yeah. I'm excited. And same directors as usual, Kat Morris and Alonzo Ramirez. All right, but yeah, let's just jump into it. Bluebird. So Steven's filming a commercial for Little Homeschool. He says that it's an updated commercial, so I'm wondering if he had a need to update it or if he's just like that bored. And like, you know, like that need to constantly fix something or do something.
It's just his obsessiveness just coming out now.
And he noticed that like he's having like these really lame pranks. He has a note written on his back that says, I smell good, or tell me I smell good.
Yeah.
His juice box is replaced with tomato soup on the go, and his car gets TP'd, but it's like very neatly stacked.
Right, like a pyramid.
Yeah, and I already enjoy those things. Obviously, Bluebird is a fusion between Aquamarine and Eyeball.
What do you mean? I didn't pick that up at all.
And just like knowing Aquamarine, knowing that she's like a diplomatic gem from Blue Diamond's court, it makes sense that like the toilet paper would be organized. But because it's Eyeball or Ruby, of course it makes sense that like they would think it's a great prank, but it's just like really lame and dumb and like not really even effective. And I think all the pranks are like that. Peridot and Amethyst like, you love tomato soup.
Those aren't really pranks. They're just kind of there.
But also makes me wonder like where they got the toilet paper from. Did they just like rob a store? Did they like go through the effort of getting human currency to buy toilet paper? Because, you know, gems don't need to defecate, so there's no like real need to have toilet paper on homeworld.
How'd they even know what toilet paper is?
Well, they said they learned a lot about Steven, so I'm assuming like that included the tomato soup and like what humans use to like clean themselves up.
There's too many layers to this.
No, definitely. We're definitely overthinking it, but that's the point of a post show. We analyze what there isn't to be analyzed.
We're going down a weird rabbit hole. Who did they vote for in the election? Did no one have the heart to like just tell her and be like, yo, that's not like how we do it? Like,
well, I think it's because, you know, she's trying.
Yeah, Steven, just eat the grass. Just do it.
But no, yeah, this episode's pretty straightforward. Steven doesn't trust Bluebird. It's very similar to Room for Ruby in terms of the execution. Like, okay, you already know what the twist is gonna be, but I think
right. And they really lean into that.
But like it's different executions.
Yeah.
here, like, Steven, he just kind of, like, gives up, and he's like, all right, clearly I'm overthinking it, and then Greg loses the skullet.
Yeah.
So well, that's a really big status quo change, too.
I mean, it's still kind of a skullet. It's just a lot shorter now.
Yeah, it's no longer, like, a quartz mane.
I just love how the fact that, like, I was jokingly like, I wish that they brought back Future and Greg just had no hair. And then this happens in the episode.
And last week in Rosebuds, he was like, I can feel the rest of my hair falling out.
Yeah, foreshadowing.
Probably. You think they're going to update the intro now?
No.
Yeah, Steven doesn't update their intros. I really just enjoy the poses in this episode. Like, again, the storyboarding was really good. I think that really punched up a lot of the jokes here. Because it was a mix of, like, you know, visual gags and just, like, general dialogue-driven jokes.
Right.
All of which were just, like, really simple and, like, really dumb that, like, this fusion misses the point just because they're a walking contradiction. You literally take, like, the opposite ends of status and hierarchy on Homeworld and you make a fusion out of them.
Right.
But I also like that they mention, like, in their motive that also I think they say, like, over a year ago, and it's been, like, 2 years at this point, which it doesn't matter. Maybe that plays into, like, the fact that, you know, they always just, like, barely miss the mark of, like, their point. But they actually specify that Aquamarine and Eyeball were individually both regarded as, like, heroes for bringing in Steven back at the end of season 4 to Homeworld. Which I'm not sure how Eyeball played a part in it, because Navy was the one who got the rubies in the first place.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, because Eyeball was at the trial, and that was right after Aquamarine brought in Steven, so I guess it would make sense that they would both be brought in and be like, oh, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
So I guess it kind of makes sense.
But, yeah, their status means nothing, so they decided to learn everything they could about Steven. Get close to Greg, or as Aquamarine calls back to, my dad. And yeah, they almost body him. Like that was just one of those moments where it's just like, oh yeah, the show can just do whatever it wants, huh?
Yeah.
But if you told me that the hair would go, I would rather Greg be pink right now.
Bro, that was such a moment where, like, he grabbed the dagger and then just, like, you knew it was coming, but you were like, they aren't gonna do it. And then they do it.
And, like, so much of it. But
yeah.
Now it's like a callback or parallel to Amethyst, just because, you know, the show insinuates that Amethyst grew her long hair because of Greg. And now Greg has short hair that's very similar to Amethyst when she first emerged, and, like, how she dressed in, like, the 90s. So I think that was just a really neat full circle thing.
Yep.
Even though, like, one was intentional and inspired and the other was a complete just like, well, it's either this or death.
Yeah.
And the ending kind of sets up that there could be more of this storyline. I'm not sure they're gonna go for it. But of course, like, this channel has been pushing that there would be a rebellion of some kind, and, you know, even Amethyst is like, oh, I guess there are gems out there who do hate you, Steven. And, like, it is not presented in a way where it's like, you don't have to worry about the people who despise you. He's just kind of like, yeah.
I love how Steven has kind of become a bit fed up.
He's not even, nothing phases him anymore.
Like, he's, like, everyone complains in Steven Universe, like, the main show, that, like, oh, he's, like, too forgiving, he's too, like, whatever. But now he's just kind of like, all right, I'm not putting up with this, like, you're gonna do this whether you like it or not. Like,
I think it's just because like, this is literally, like, his life now.
Yeah.
Where, as before, you know, trying to connect and help with people was just a rare opportunity in bleak situations. But, like, now he literally does this for a living. So, like, of course he's gonna be over any, like, opposing forces and people who, at this point, think, like, they can win in some way, shape, or form or get revenge on them. Because he's just like, dude, I'm a diamond. Like,
he's just sick of it.
Yeah, it's like,
he's like, I'm just trying to exist at this point. Like,
I do wonder what's gonna happen with that fusion, especially just because at the end, like, they flew off. They didn't take a warp pad there. There are, like, literally 2 warp pads in walking distance of them, like, both in Steven's house.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they're staying on Earth, because we know Jasper's on Earth. Or did they just fly all the way back to space? Did they just, like, awkwardly fly to a different galaxy warp? Like, what are they doing now?
Do they have, like, a secret hideout of their own?
Also really like Pro's line about how, like, Steven's freaking out about their fusion being there, and Pro's like, Steven, you literally invited every problematic gem to deal with, like, their toxic behavior.
Right. That was just the voice of the fandom at that point. Like,
it was one of those moments that was definitely written in the perspective of, like, this is what a fan would say.
Yeah.
Which I think there's a lot of that in future.
There's a lot of self-awareness. I feel
Yeah,
like.
it's very rewarding because, again, it is an epilogue. So, of course, you're going to be able to reflect on, like, the actions of the show itself and, like, how the show was written. Because, of course, like, the people making the show are going to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. Overall, like, it wasn't, like, a heavy episode. I really enjoyed how fun it was while still pertaining to the overarching theme.
Right.
And Pink Steven also, like, appeared for 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. We got, also, we learned that, like, a really huge detail is that, like, even if a fusion composes of a gem that doesn't have a weapon, that fusion can still evolve into a different kind of weapon, because we know Garnet, again, her gauntlets, and I speculate that perhaps Eyeball's glaive, I think it's the glaive, or no, a chisel, her chisel could evolve in the Bluebird is alright fusion, but like it wasn't more than just like a knife at that point. It was a full-on sword that could also shoot like water droplets. So I thought that was cool.
Water droplets that turn into swords.
True. Like, I don't know. I think that's a really big development. And again, because I had made a video speculating that this fusion would be stronger than we think, and for the reason that like we don't know what Eyeball's weapon would like evolved, and also like, you know, Aquamarine is still like a strategic gem. Mm-hmm. And like they did have a brilliant strategy, go straight for like Steven's heart, but of course they messed it up for themselves. Also, I was right on the money about their reasons for fusing, which was hating Steven. Mm-hmm. But I thought that from the jump it would be, and like, oh, we have like this in common, like there's still like a genuine relationship and like admiration there, but it'd be built off of hating Steven. But that's what we got in the resolution. So like they still fused to, like, for their hatred over Steven, but now it's more of a bonding as opposed to just like, hey, you hate him, I hate him.
Yeah. That was what was implied.
Yes, hate fucking, we love it.
A
healthy message for kids.
Ironically, to Bluebird, the Naruto opening.
But yeah, any closing thoughts on this episode?
Pretty good.
I agree. And that takes us to a very special episode, which completely took me by surprise, of course. Reading way too much into things. A lot of fans, me included, started to like speculate that maybe this episode would be a bit more sinister. Just because Amish stated on Twitter, that this episode comes after Bluebird. It's not like Bluebird. So people thought, oh, maybe Bluebird would be like the lighter one, and then a very special episode will, you know, blindside us and be a very serious one. But no, like this was just a straight PSA parody.
I mean, it was pretty sinister though.
Yeah,
like it got pretty.
It had
sinister.
dark moments, but like I would say it was on the level of like season 1 humor, where a lot of the jokes are dark, but they're also goofy.
Yeah.
And like the second that Rainbow unfused and Pearl's like, I can take care of Onion, I knew exactly where it was going, and it's like everything that I wanted them to do with that scenario, they did. Mm-hmm. And it really translated well to like the storyboarding, like Pearl FaceTiming Steven, and like she's in the dark, and they added like the detailed rims on her face.
Yeah.
And like the background's just like a green gradient, like you can't tell where she is. Mm-hmm. Like just the idea that like even though it was just still like Onion's house with the lights off, like just the idea that like Onion could just send Pearl to like a different dimension almost. It's very much what I want to see with Onion, and I feel like they haven't really gotten that crazy with Onion in a while.
No.
It's, at least like the episode Onion Gang kind of like started like turning around the idea of Onion being like a powerful demigod.
I mean, now they have the opportunity to actually do stuff with the Townie episodes that aren't like disruptive to the narrative. Because I think that's the main reason people don't like the Townie episodes. Isn't necessarily that the characters aren't likable. It's just that we've gotten so accustomed to seeing them when things are being disrupted, so people have become conditioned to not like them. Yeah. But here it's like you don't necessarily have that, especially since we're getting the episodes so frequently right now.
And the fact that like this episode started 2 fusions. Yeah. And we had our first song of Future with Rainbow 2.0, which everything about Rainbow in this episode very Mary Poppins-esque. Yeah. Which I really enjoyed. Just because, like, back when Change Your Mind aired, obviously people were citing Mary Poppins as, like, an influence, and, like, that was confirmed in the podcast, but just see them lean into that more, and I think some people may be disappointed that, like, unlike other fusions, both Sunstone and Rainbow are both just like kind of parodies, but like on two different ends. But I think what they're parodies of and like who they're parodying is a testament to who that to who they are as characters.
Right.
Like if you would describe Rainbow Courts 2.0 like, oh, as a Mary Poppins character, but of course like the show isn't just like a space drama, it's also a comedy. So it's like, well, let's just have them act like Mary Poppins, but it doesn't mean like they don't have their own characteristics either.
Right.
Although I did like how just Goofy got at the end of like Pearl and Garnet arguing over like which fusion Steven should use to save, and then Amethyst runs out of nowhere. I thought like Smokey was gonna make like a 2-second cameo, like not say anything, but just like
I haven't seen you in like 11 minutes.
Also,
I love how during that whole thing, it's like like, oh, they're all the gems that jumped off are dead. Like they died like 5 minutes ago. Like.
Onion led them to their death. But I also really appreciate. I knew eventually a cartoon would do this. The motion smoothing joke. With the, when you, like, make your teeth look like it's 60 frames per second and, like, it butchers animation. Just because I know, like, so many people who mean well and they get a new TV and they genuinely think that's supposed to make it look better. I don't think they actually believe that. I think they just believe it because it's a feature that's enabled that wasn't present on an old TV.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, well, this must look better, right? Right?
It's great for sports, though.
At a very predictable lesson, like, a lot of people could have saw coming just from reading this synopsis. Like, just don't spread yourself too thin. Don't overbook yourself, and don't be afraid to step out when you do overbook yourself. But it was just generally presented with a lot of great jokes and gags, and I feel like that's all I can really ask for.
And it all tied together in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it didn't feel like a forced thing. It felt very natural how they just kind of brought it all.
And the ending being a nod to the Dove shorts with, like, the green screen backdrop and everything, but, like, in the show's art style.
It's very similar to how they had, like, that whole talk show episode with Sardonyx. It only makes sense to do that with Sunstone with, like, a PSA.
Yeah, I feel like both of these episodes were, like, almost a homage to Know Your Fusion. That was, like, a meta episode about fusions.
Right.
And, of course, they had to do the same thing with Sunstone and Rainbow 2.0, just because it's like, well, we know these fusions, but we don't really know more about them. And again, I can see how this episode could potentially disappoint those who, wanted like a deeper characterization of those fusions.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
again, to me, it's just like,
it is a filler episode. Like at the end of the day, it is a filler episode because it exists within its own thing. Like it's technically filler for what people consider filler for Steven Universe. So I can see why people would be disappointed in that regard. Yeah,
because again, there was no big plot advancement. It was just a really meta episode. But like, I think it's fun that it was a one-off.
Yeah.
Like, because I would definitely say this is like a one-off. Like, you could rank it up there with like Say Uncle or like Garnet Universe.
Right.
But like, I love those episodes of the show, and I think people have to realize, like, with Future, it serves to tie up the loose ends. But at the same time, when you really think about it, there weren't that many pressing loose ends about Steven Universe. And if they have an entire season order, of course you're going to use some episodes to just, like, fuck around and do whatever they want.
Do fan service.
Yeah.
Because that's what this was. It was fan service because we don't know these characters yet. And, like, we've been introduced to them, but we haven't actually gotten to spend any time with them. So that was basically what this episode
also,
was.
Just the idea of, like, Steven, utilizing these fusions casually to do tasks like these to help people, to, like, whether it's babysitting Onion or giving a Geminar to little homeschool. And again, Garnet's morbid future visions, how everyone dies in this house. It's just a small yet appreciated nugget of role building, because with the original Steven Universe, we never knew if, or like, not even like if we never knew, it was just mainly implied that like fusions were only used for like important or dire situations. They were like rarely ever casually used. I think the only example I can think of is Opal and Log Date. But I think it also makes sense for Steven to casually use these fusions, at least more so than like Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl would do on their own.
Right.
Just because, I feel like Steven, because when he's young, and I think he has, fusion is still like relatively new to him. Like, this is still something he's only been doing for like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And something he didn't know he could even do, whereas like as gems, they come out of the ground, they can always fuse, and like the crystal gems have been doing cross gem fusion for thousands of years. So I think it's natural for him to want to explore that more. For all we know, the gems did the exact same thing like back in the day when they were still discovering fusion, especially like for how short years are to gems. I don't think there's any other word for it to just like I'm happy by the episode. Like it made me laugh, it made me happy. Like I didn't need a big, dark, epic takeaway. Like, because this is also like what Steven Universe is. Like, it's not always just like dark, cry, feel good, lore, plot. It's like also, again, just episodes where you can like sit back and laugh, but still have it retain its sense of humor and its dark sense of humor and lean into those themes, but in just ways that, again, can make anyone laugh.
It's some of the aspects of season 1 that kind of got lost as the plot kind of started to thicken.
Yeah, because I feel like season 1 and season 3 had like the strongest townie episodes.
Right.
But anything else, they were definitely weaker in comparison. Because like season 1, they were like figuring out the world. So like townie episodes were just like episodes of Steven Universe where like, you know, the gems are there, they get into like this situation. But you also have the people who inhabit this town Steven live in. And of course there'd be crossover and things bleeding in.
Yeah.
But it got more and more segregated as the series evolved, which I think wasn't a bad call. I think it was just, you know, it was just like an oversight. And also, I'm sure budgeting probably had a lot to do with it.
It was just how it was evolving. But it ended up losing a little bit of the charm that was there. And I feel like that's more present in Future now.
And also, I think with Future, just because it is like a limited epilogue week, we would only have so much. Not a lot of people would say this, but I feel at least I would want, like, let's say in a world where every episode of Future was like this long saga, space epic, the biggest answers you ever wanted in the series, and every episode is like dark and serious and action and everything. I would probably say, like, in a video, like 10 things I wanted in Future would be like, I wanted like just fun casual episodes.
Right, because you need the balance. And I especially think that it worked with this episode order to have that following Bluebird, because Bluebird it plants seeds for the future. And so we have that continuity and things are moving forward, and then you can just kind of have that levity afterwards.
Yeah.
As opposed to like if you had like several of these episodes in a row where it's like that's all you get, and that's where people start to kind of
like next upset. Week we get like the 2 homework lapises. And I forgot what else, but like another. Oh yeah, next week's also Snow Day, where like we get like catch up with the gems and everything, and I'm sure it'll probably be like some like flashback set in during the time skip.
So they're mixing it with like plot progression and slice of life.
I think I've just been conditioned to this point, like, you know, covering Steven Universe for like the last few years, where it's like whenever there's an episode that isn't, you know, blowing people away like 100%, I get like a natural defense mode because I'm like, well, you know, it's still like a good show.
Because those people are always gonna, they're gonna be there
with like any show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all we really had to say. Again, because these episodes weren't crazy, there's not like too much to say. But I had fun with them. I enjoyed them. I definitely want to rewatch Bluebird again. Like I just like the action a lot. I just think they're neat. I like Eyeball and I like Aquamarine. So seeing them return and leaving the door open again for more, hopefully, because if this series is setting up loose ends, I would consider this like the ending of this episode a loose end if this was like all we got.
Right.
But people at home, what did you think of Steven Universe Future episode 5 and 6, Bluebird, a very special episode? Let us know in the comments below. Tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. You can find me at AustricThoughts.
Or me at TommyPQM.
And be sure to also follow us on Instagram. You can help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, please sort of like, subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. AustricThoughts
and Tom
signing out.
See ya.